All right, this is the video for the French and Indian War. So this is the beginning of the causes for the Revolutionary War. The French and Indian War really starts the beginning of everything. The outcome of this war is going to lead to all of the taxes that the colonists hate and ultimately that decision to declare independence. Right now, they're colonists. They still see themselves as English citizens and they're happy with the protection from the crown, especially during a war, because the English have a lot more money than them and they have a better navy and army. So the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, you'll hear it both ways. Who's involved? The French, the English, and Native Americans. When did it start? In 1754, so 20 years before the Revolutionary War. And where was it? In the English colonies. The 7 Years' War, when people talk about that, that's going on in England and France and the rest of Europe. And the specific part that's in America we call the French and Indian War, though technically it's the same war, just like World War II. It was in Europe, in Japan and China, and actually there was some fighting in the United States. So it can be all around the world. So this is kind of actually the first global war we have, but we do not call it World War I. This is before that. All right, so the main issue that's going to lead to the French and Indian War conflict, there's a couple things. The first one is we have our colonies. They're in that darker green right now. The colonists are getting bigger. There's more of them. The population is increasing. They want to have more land, so they want to move into new areas. So a lot of the colonists want to move into new areas, especially this area. It's called the Ohio Valley. Well, we have Ohio right here. That's where it's going to get its name when we finally find that state. So English colonists want to move there. So they're in blue. And also, we have some French colonists who want to live in there too. They're in green. And we have some Native Americans who are already living there. So we'll call those the red. Okay? So we have all three groups, and they're kind of all wanting that one area. They don't want to share. So Native Americans, they're saying, hey, this was our land first. French are saying, we're the first Europeans to claim this land, we should have it, which is true. They were the first ones. They've already built forts. And then the English are like, well, our colonists are here. You don't have colonists, really. And our colonists want it, so they're moving into there. So really, the colonists are kind of causing this conflict that ultimately the English government is going to have to solve with their soldiers. So there's a long war. Goes on for, you guessed it, 7 years. So it's called the 7 Years' War. Mostly, the causes are going to be colonists wanting more land, French, English, and natives both claiming that same land, that Ohio Valley that I just talked about. Native Americans are upset that colonists, both French and English, are moving into their land. And French and Native Americans are going to ally themselves because, like I said, the French didn't really have that many colonists. They were mostly building forts. And they were more willing to work with the Native Americans. So you need to pause, copy all of this down into that same shape on your cause and effect chart for French and Indian War. When you're done, you can restart. All right, so if you're moving on, that means you copy down all of those notes. So we have our war. And then now we talk about our outcomes. So the war was between French and Indians and English and some of the Indians. There was way more Indians on the French side. So the outcome of this, England actually wins, if you want to say win. The effects of the war were that England is now in a huge debt. They won, but they had to spend a lot of money to get there. So debt means you have to pay it back. So in that first square on your chart, this is what you need to write in there. The second effect, which could be the square underneath the debt, is England gets the land. So England is going to get that Ohio River Valley land that was right here. So now we have some new land for our colonists. Also, a really important effect is the natives who lost are very mad at England. They were mad before, now they're really mad. So Britain's going to have to respond to these three effects. The first way it responds is that debt is it's going to have to increase taxes on colonists. This is just like every day in America today. If you want something and you want the government to provide it, usually you have to have an increase in taxes. And the colonists didn't want to pay more taxes. They thought they were already paying enough. They were paying probably, let's say, if we want to do ratios, like they're paying 1 coin for every 10 coins that British citizens in England were paying for this war. So that's a really uneven ratio. Britain was already being heavily taxed. The colonists could afford to pay a little bit more. You know, if I'm a British citizen in England, I'm paying 10 coins. And if I'm in America, I'm only paying 1. I could pay more because it's the same government. I pretty much have the same goods that I need to buy. If anything, it's going to be cheaper to live in the colonies. That's where England's coming from. They're like, we need you to pay a little bit more. You're still our citizens. We're going to treat you the same. The colonists are going to get mad at that. The way they're going to respond to England getting the land, the colonists want to automatically occupy it. Britain wants to sell it. So they're going to send their soldiers in and occupy the land. They're going to take over those French forts. And they're not going to let people just come in and grab land. They want to make money off of the Ohio River Valley. The colonists do not think that's fair. They think that they're some of the soldiers who fought there, they should get it. The British response to how mad the Indians are, along with their soldiers moving in, is the Proclamation of 1763. They make a legal government document that says it is illegal for colonists to move west of that line because they do not want to upset the Indians any more than they have to. And they're going to start coming up with ways to sell that land. All right, that leads us into the Proclamation of 1763. What it was is literally it said colonists, colonists cannot go past the Appalachian Mountains, which is right here. There's a lot of the present day borders. It's a little bit, you can kind of see they've drawn in the normal borders. It's a little bit different, but it was just saying you're not allowed to go past there because we want to protect you from Indians. We don't want to start another war. They're not really coming out and saying they want you to pay for the land, but the colonists can they're starting to learn that too, and that makes them upset. Again, there's two sides to this. We have the British side, which makes sense, and we have the colonist side, which we can see and it can make sense. It's just, which side are you on? And a lot of colonists hadn't decided yet at this point. This is still very early. Remember, we're like 20 years before. By 1763, we're getting closer. We're about 10-ish years out from the major stuff happening. All right. That's kind of my quick little lesson on French and Indian War. I want to show you how to fill out your timeline because you're going to be doing that throughout the whole activity. So you're going to need to get your timeline out. And here's the timeline I made for you. I did the French and Indian War and the Proclamation of 1763 as an example. If they are not shaded, we are going to talk about them, but they're not part of this activity. But they are really important things to know, so you will need to know them. So you have this timeline, and you're just going to put the overall name of the event. While you're going through, you are going to be watching videos. And so while you watch those videos, use the dates on this to fill in the correct information. In order to kind of explain what each of these are, you have this sheet, and this is where you're going to add a little bit of an overview of what each thing is, and you need to tell me the effect it had. So why was it important? Why is it a cause for the revolution? So over here I did the French and Indian War for you. Notice I'm not writing in complete sentences. This is small. You may have to write smaller. If you cannot fit it on this piece of paper, get a separate sheet of paper if you need to. For French and Indian War, I just wrote war between England and France. The effect is debt, and the colonies have to pay, because that's really the main thing that's going to cause the war. I could also talk about the land, but the Proclamation 1766 kind of gets into that. So the colonists can't pass mountains or that line, and the effect is it really upset the colonists. They want that land. So when you learn about the Stamp Act, you will give me a overview of the Stamp Act, and then the effect it had. Why is it so important for us to know about the Stamp Act? All right, so now you can go on to the next activity. Make sure you fill out your timeline and do all the activities that go along with each cause by looking at these sheets that I made for you. Okay, have fun.